Oli Olis, this is the Double Face, a true crime podcast. I'm Jose.
And I'm Melissa.
And this episode is Ted Bundy, Theodore Bundy. And this is part 1 to Ted Bundy. Okay, guys, so I didn't want to do this week, but here we are doing it again to you. This is going to be a 2-parter, only because I did choose somebody that's extremely infamous, and you know him by name. We all know him by name. We've seen TV shows, but we're doing Ted Bundy this week.
Yes.
And
Wait, I want to talk about my concert, my Justin Timberlake concert.
Oh yeah, how did it go?
It went so good. I mean, it's been a week now, but yeah. Amazing show. Go see it if you haven't gotten to go see it. I mean, he's already left Texas, but anybody in the upper states. Anywho, okay, back to
no, so the closer thing, the one thing that she wanted was for her birthday, right?
Yeah, it was a birthday gift from you and from our other best friend. And we got, I tried to get a seat on the floor. Couldn't get it. I was in there waiting. Man, tickets were going so fast. So I kind of left it to my other best friend to I was like, hey, you take it. I got stuff to do. And so she was able to get me a really close seat. Still didn't realize how close I was because it's like, you're in row 10. So I thought, oh, I'm still in the middle. No, get there. And I'm like, I call Jose first and I'm like, look where I'm at. It is super close.
No, she was really, I don't think I've ever been that, well, Christina Aguilera, I guess.
And I was like,
but
oh my God.
Still, I don't think I was that close, as close
So
as you
I said, I am going to manifest it and I am going to meet this man and ask him to be my bestie. So you're going to have to get him to the side.
Yeah, exactly. You can have her. Please take her. But with that said, let's go ahead and start with Ted Bundy. Let's just start off by saying viewer discretion, let's just start off by saying listener discretion is advised. This can get grim when we're talking about him because he is, you already know that he's a necrophiliac. Mm-hmm. I think it's the correct term. So please just be careful. We'll tell you when, but if not, we forgot. So here's your warning. Yeah. So Ted Bundy was born on November 24th, 1946 to Eleanor Cowell. Now, on the birth certificate, it stated that Lloyd Marshall is the father and he wanted to do nothing with Ted. So she put Jack Worthington. Now, the only thing is with Jack Worthington, he wasn't supposed to, like, they couldn't find out through research and so forth. They can't find out who he is. Mm-hmm. So they think that this is make-believe. I'm going to mention this, and I heard this on the podcast, Morbid. Go check them out. They're amazing. They also confirmed that they couldn't find anything, but they're almost stating that the father raped her. And that's how they had the baby Ted. But there's nothing confirmed. The only reason I say that is because the fathers, both of them wanted nothing to do with Ted. Does that make sense? And then one of them, we can't even confirm who he is, and they never did.
But did they confirm that the one that was Lloyd Marshall, did they ever confirm or do DNA or anything like that?
I don't know. They never did that with anyone, not even the father, so we really couldn't say. Okay, so back then, to avoid shaming his family, you know how they used to, because in 1946, to avoid shame, you kind of adopted, the parents could adopt the child and say, that's the new child into the family. Mm-hmm. That's how you bring the new child, right? So, of course, on that, it stated that growing up, Ted thought for a bit his mother was his sister. Mm-hmm. So Samuel Cowell was her father. Eleanor Cowell was her mother. And this is what's interesting. We just finished with Rose and Fred
West.
Yeah. Now, with both of them, it was interesting because the mother also, Eleanor, was also severely depressed, that she even had electrical shock done with her, which is the same as Rose's mother. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Connection they had.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, that's what they would do because they didn't know what to do with depression.
Yeah, exactly. So on 1951, Eleanor married a man called John Bundy. This is Ted Bundy's actual mother. She says, I'm fed up with living with her father. I'm fed up living in this, because they said he wasn't a nice man either. Like, he harmed animals as well, and was, I think, verbally abusive with Eleanor. So she just one day grabs him and takes him away, and this is where she meets John Bundy. His mother wanted to, they were a blended family. One thing that they were is, he came with kids, she came with a child. So he came with 3 and she had her 1. And so anyway, they were a blended family. They stated that, I saw this online on a Netflix episode, and it stated that they were wealthy or well-off family. But they at least had enough to, they said you couldn't tell. They were like the Cleavers of the neighborhood, because they did everything. They did Boy Scouts. They took them here. They were involved in their school. So they were pretty decent parents overall. Now, but the only thing is that Ted was just, he wasn't fitting in like he normally was. Growing up, they said he had a stutter, and there's something I'm going to tie with them later, that there are other serial killers that did start off like that, where they had a stuttering problem and became, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I just wanted to kind of put that in there. He grew up near the woods, and I didn't know this. All this time, I didn't know that he grew up near the woods while living together. They played around there. Even Ted says in one of the tapes where he is recorded, he says that growing up in Tacoma, Washington, he was, of course, in Cub Scouts, but he wasn't great at it. They had like, you had to tie knots, and he wasn't great at it. Shooting guns, wasn't great at it. So one thing that Ted was really good at is he would build tiger traps. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so tiger traps is like, let's say it's a square little thing you dig up on the dirt, right? You're gonna leave a nice fall, so maybe about 4 or 5 feet down.
Okay.
So you would build this hole, and inside the holes you would put spikes. I'm sure you've seen this in movies.
Yeah.
You put spikes pointing up, right? Then you cover the top, and I guess tigers would, walk all over it, and poof. Well, Ted one time built this tiger trap, and one of the neighborhood's little girls didn't know that it was covered, and she fell right through it and landed on like the side of where her hip is, and just completely gashed her leg all the way down. It was heartbreaking. It doesn't say that Ted got in trouble. It doesn't say like what happened exactly. It doesn't go into detail, but it kind of sets you up for, because I want you to remember that he grew up in the forest, which plays a big factor later on. And not only on top of that, his mindset does. So in the way he treats and the way he like takes these women, it's almost like a trap for them as well. So I want to quote something that I saw in the Netflix special, and it's called The Conversation with the Killer. You got to look it up. It's a really good show. Ted says, and I quote, "There is nothing in my background which would lead one to believe that I was capable of murder." I'm sorry. Nothing stated, even though he wasn't, yes, they stated he was a good looking kid, decent looking, right? But never amounted to like making too many friendships. Didn't get, like, he didn't go into like parties, didn't drink, nothing like that. He just stayed away and was very recluse when it came to that. Well, and this is when it starts beginning. In 1967, he went to college and met Stephanie Brooks. She came from a political family and went, well off. I was looking at a photo of hers, and she looked almost like a young Jackie Kennedy Onassis.
Wow.
I went to go look, and I was like, oh, wow, she looks like... Nobody's ever mentioned that, but maybe it's just me. But
yeah, because you wanted to put a face to the name, so...
Yeah. And when I was looking at her, because he has a very specific type. they dated for a while, and I mean for a while. I don't know, who knows what happened in between of Ted and Stephanie dating. Like, I'm sure she saw red flags. I'm sure there was something to it. But he fell madly in love with Stephanie. I mean, Stephanie almost set him up for like what his future was going to be for a little bit. And you would think that one person looking at it like, wow, Ted became amazing. But I think it's only because to get her back. She ends up dumping him after some time. And she's like, no, this is not going to work out. You're not ambitious. I don't see you with goals. Like, there's no direct, like, she wanted a man that had ties to almost like what her parents did, right? Yeah. Political, had a future, so forth. He said, I mean, he was devastated with this one. He immediately was like, what? They said his brother mentioned that he was very recluse. He wasn't himself. Like, normally he was a little more upbeat than this, but he just completely was depressed. I don't know what switches in him, Ted, that he's like, okay, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to do extremely well. So his major was psychology. He said he almost used the psychology that he did learn on how to approach people and what to expect from them. And he used it only for his benefit, but not to educate himself in the sense of like be a great human being in this world. If he had used it for great powers, I think he could have been like a attorney or a judge. I mean, he could have been something amazing, I think.
So do I, because when it says that the breakup happened, there was like this switch in him. So everything that he accomplished or he was going for was like, damn, I wonder where in his head did it click to where it's like, where the beginning stages of his behavior starts happening.
But you know what's interesting is that he does get into politics. He even becomes part of the Seattle office of Nelson Rockefeller presidential campaign. He was very clean cut. Yes, a Republican. When you looked at Ted, they mentioned this, you've seen this, is that he was very clean and nice looking and put together. Boy next door kind of look, right? Same time that he dated Liz Kendall. Because during this time that he's like going for this and doing all this good stuff, going for school, attending all these, because mind you, he's attending these soirees and parties and political things, and Ted was there and he would speak to anybody. I mean, he would start a conversation and the debates, and he was a very smart guy. People said, wow, he can actually converse with you in reference to politics. Well, at the same time he meets Liz Kendall. Liz Kendall has a 3-year-old daughter, and he says there's something that wasn't connected. This is from Ted's actual interview. He says, I wasn't connected with her. I couldn't give her what she emotionally wanted, which is me. My who am I, where am I, like what goals, my attributes, nothing. He goes, but he never harmed both of them. So I don't know what you make of that, but he said I wasn't the partner she wanted me to be. But I don't think anybody was gonna ever get Ted as the open partner and phenomenal human being, because he's had relationships along the way. But if he didn't have a relationship that suited or looked like Stephanie.
Yeah, because he's gonna go back to that.
Yeah, it didn't matter. I mean, young and vibrant and long-haired. If you didn't look like that, he didn't really care about you. And one thing they did say about him is that, who knows if it's true, but they said if he spent more than 20 minutes with a woman and he talked to her, he no longer saw you as a target. I know, right? 20 minutes with a woman, and if he talked to you longer than that, then he was like, oh, okay, I don't see you like that. Because he had a relationship with a woman who worked for during this time, he worked for a woman who was at a suicide hotline.
Yeah.
Out of all places. She wasn't. She was a little bit older. She had the complete opposite. It was almost going gray. So She stated to this day she couldn't, well, maybe not this day, but when they interviewed her, that she still couldn't realize that that was a Ted, because Ted was a kind human being, was great, would pull people off the ledge when they were wanting to commit suicide. But of course, he wasn't in front of them, this animal that he normally was, and nobody saw behind the scenes. So of course she would say that, because she didn't even really know him. Then in 1973, Ted was accepted to the University of Utah law school in Utah. This is where he met Stephanie again, or kind of rekindled the flame, right? And by this point, he's already somebody significant. People know him throughout the political views, and they know him in that arena. So she knows, like, wow, he is becoming somebody. So she is falling for Ted, and I mean falling for Ted the way Ted fell for her. But this time, he even proposes to Stephanie to see, like, mind you, he's dating both of them, both Liz and Stephanie at the same time. Because, of course, he's also an asshole. But he's dating both of them. But his target has always been Stephanie.
Yeah.
So he gets Stephanie, proposes to her, and as soon as she says yes, he dumps her. I mean, dumps her. Doesn't talk to her anymore, doesn't look for her, nothing. I mean, and that to me automatically tells me that his goal was to get Stephanie back, but to get her through law school, to get her, like, to be part of this community, to show her that he was someone.
He has power.
That, yes, that he can prove that he can also fit in her world. But to me, that just tells me, wow, what a conniving, vindictive human being, right? He just wanted to reel her in and then just let her go. Boom, bye. Okay, so immediately right after that, so on January 4th, 1974, 18-year-old Karen Sparks was asleep in her apartment. She was beaten by a metal bar that was attached to her bed. So I guess Ted breaks into her room, pulls the bar, and just starts whacking her. Her roommates found her in the morning with the bar jammed inside of her. On February the 1st, Linda Ann Healy, which is 21-year-old, she's a 21-year-old who was spotted by Ted in a local bar. She worked at a local radio station. She was like, okay, I gotta go, guys, because I gotta get up for work. You know, gotta get ready. Mind you, she has 4 roommates. The roommates were there at the house while she showed up. Goes to sleep. Ted breaks in, used the crowbar to beat her. He takes off her nightgown, gets a nightgown, puts it on a hanger, puts it in the closet, closes it, and then goes back, wraps her in the sheets, and then makes the bed. And then drags her out, however, through a window, through a door, we don't know. But he takes her out. Now, the only reason that the roommates found this out was because the radio station, because she had to be there like 3, 4 in the morning, super early. They call in and they say, hey, she didn't make it to work. Is everything okay? Well, the roommates go in there, and at first glance, they're like, well, we don't really see anything. She's not here. They pull back the sheets and they realize that there is a bloody mess all over the sheets. And I saw it at first. I was like, oh, it just looked like a little bit of blood, right? Nothing too crazy. But once they showed the other photos, you could see like just a soaking pool of blood from where her head laid.
She was actually found 14 months later at Taylor Mountain, which is like an hour away from her home. So she didn't survive.
And you know what's funny is that this is a great transition, because Taylor Mountain plays a huge factor into this, where he starts putting the bodies, or not bodies, I'm so sorry, pieces of her bodies, of all these other girls. Ted, spoiler alert, just so you know, he asked for his ashes to be spread at the same place where his victims died. The audacity, not even audacity, the fuck nerve to be asking that. You know that there's a picture and he's in, I don't know how they took this photo, but he is in the air and he's like, You can't see it, but it almost looks like a commercial where, you know, when somebody jumps up in the air with their hands up in the air and their feet are like cocked to the side a little bit. And they're like, "Wee." He is actually at Taylor Mountain.
What?
At
I
Taylor
didn't
Mountain.
read that, so I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that photo is taken at Taylor Mountain, which is disgusting and disturbing. And we'll get into why it's even more disgusting. So you've been warned. So now he meets one 19-year-old Donna Gill Manson. March 12th in Olympia, Washington. He claimed that he murdered her, but he never explained how, so we don't know. 18-year-old, then he meets 18-year-old.
That one, I found out that she was actually decapitated, and her head was, he took her head and cremated it in his girlfriend's fireplace, is what I read.
What?
During that time that he was with Liz, this murder happened.
Oh.
So he took what is it, Donna's head, decapitated her, cremated her, put her head in his girlfriend's fireplace.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So then 18-year-old Susan Roncourt on April 17, 1974, Susan was working hard to get through like college. She was a go-getter. She was just a hardworking little girl. She went to a meeting that night and was never heard from again. Her skull was the only thing that was found on Taylor Mountain. And I want to mention that Taylor Mountain, because I wanted to see from where he was to where Taylor Mountain was, he drove 2 hours out of the way and came back. So he pulled him, took them there, and then came back to where he was living. Then on May 6, 1974, mind you, he is going on a huge rampage at this point. So in one of the interviews, it even shows where the police kind of gather all the information, and they're almost like 21 days apart, 2019, 18, 20. It's really interesting.
They're really close, yeah.
Yeah, he is really going off.
For it, yeah.
So one night she wasn't heard from again, right? Her skull was the only thing that was found in Taylor Mountain. And on May 6, 1974, Roberta Parks was a college student. She had agreed to meet her friends and she just never showed up. Her skull was also found in Taylor Mountain. Now, the next person that was found was June 1st of 1974. It was Brenda Carol Ball. Last seen leaving, talking to a man with a sling. And this is where the other people never had mentioned anything like that. Now you can start seeing that Ted Bundy is using his tools of crutches and slings and can't hold on to anything. So just keep that in mind. So they said Brenda was so like a free spirit, not having contact with her friends for a few days was normal for her. Brenda's skull was found by students working on Taylor Mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, that one I didn't get to see what happened to her. So
it's okay. So this is gonna be a little grotesque, but Ted was considered to be a necrophile. I didn't know this.
Neither did I.
Which is a sexual attraction to corpses. In case you didn't know, I didn't know. I looked it up. With that said, the body parts of the bodies that were found on Taylor Mountain, he would dress them up. He would even put makeup on them, have sex with them, until their bodies were really putrefied. Then he wouldn't. Oh, God forbid, because now he has standards. The next one was Georgianne Hawkins. She was walking behind her sorority house and Ted was on crutches. Now, I want to mention she was only feet away from her house. She was in an alleyway that was attached to like the back where if she was walking in the alley, she was already close to her sorority, but Ted was parked to the side. He had a crowbar that was on top of the passenger back or front. It doesn't say tire, so he had it just sitting on top of there. He drops his books, and of course, because these girls are more likely sweethearts and helping people, he has the crutches on, right? And he drops the books and she's like, "Oh, is everything okay?" And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't pick up the books. Do you mind helping me? And so she, of course, picks up the books. And he says, oh, do you mind just putting it inside my car? And of course, she's like, yeah, of course. So she goes on the passenger side, opens the door, and notices immediately that there is a seat missing from there. So he has a buggy, I'm so sorry. A big factor into the overall of where his body's laid. So let me explain how the buggy is. It's a small, 1970?
I didn't get the year.
1970s car.
It's little.
It's very little. It's a 2-seater front and then a long little seat in the back. So as you're driving, the back almost touches the back seat. So there's this long back seat where if you're skinny enough, you can sit back there and be comfortable, I guess. But he pulled the passenger seat, pulled it off. So all he had was that opening for almost like a body to lie in. So if he was driving, you couldn't see it. So she then pulls right. She opens the door, throws the books in there, and he doesn't skip a beat. He grabs the crowbar and he just smashes her in the head. I mean, it knocks her out. He then pulls her into the car, I guess throws the crutches wherever he does, and then takes off. Now, the only thing is, she does, as he's on his way to Taylor Mountain, she does happen to wake up. And the poor thing is so, I guess, he just hit her over the head. She's probably just trying to come to, doesn't realize. And he mentions that she says, I've got to go take my Spanish test. I just got to go take my Spanish test.
Oh my God.
So he was like, whoa, she startles him. So he pulls over on the side of the road. He gets out of the car, goes around it, and just beats her, and keeps beating her until she's out. I mean, she just dies there instantly. And so he immediately takes note of that and says, oh, I don't want to do this again. Like, if I'm going to beat them, I want to make sure that they're automatically dead. So he takes her to Taylor Mountains. So now I want to mention that at the same time, I guess they're starting to realize there is heat going on. And at the same time, he's like, oh, I guess this is Taylor Mountain's already getting a little hot. Let me move somewhere else. So he then goes and gets his next victim at Lake Sammamish State Park. This is actually closer to Taylor Mountain. I went to go look at it, and it's only like 42 minutes away. Where he was located was 2 hours away.
Yeah.
So he made it a little more convenient for him. On July 14, 1974, on a busy day, and it's a busy during the midday. This is usually, he was known to grab girls like late at night or, it was already getting dark. No, this is the middle of the day. There was supposed to be about 40 to 50,000 people in attendance that day. A lot of companies gathered together on that same day, so the lake was filled of people. Ted got a little brave when it came to this one, because Ted goes up to Mary and asked her to move his sailboat. But the only thing is, of course, he's on crutches. Was it crutches or?
He was on
sling?
I think it was the sling because the way he asked for help.
Yeah. Thank you. So he's wearing a sling. He goes up to Mary and says, hey, do you mind helping me with my boat? Mind you, people are around, so they're hearing this conversation. And now, in hindsight, I would have been like, Mary, get your ass over here. But Mary goes around towards the location, because they showed it was like where normally the cars would park. So she goes over there, and she notices that there's no sailboat. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's just because my sailboat's at my house. Do you mind going with me over there? And she's like, and I guess finally,
it clicked.
Ding, 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 tells her, like, get out of there. She says, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't go with you because I'm meeting up with my parents. So I don't want to go. I can't do it. I'm so sorry. He says, no, that's okay. I'm so sorry. Thank you for trying to help me. So he walks Mary back. Not because he's being kind. It's because he can't take Mary, so he's got to get another one. So he walks Mary back, apologizes, and she says he was really sweet to me. But one thing he did mention was his name, Ted. This is something he does at this function, at this party, at this lake get together, is that he mentions his name. He doesn't even get creative, girl. He doesn't make up another name. No, Ted, uses Ted. So then he goes back and then he meets Janice Ott. She went on her bike, got there, and was just trying to take in the sun, right? But he sees Janice by herself and goes up to her and he says the same thing, doesn't change his story. Hey, do you need a sailboat? Blah, blah, blah. And she says, sure, I'll go help you. So he goes around and he tells her, do you mind helping me? Now, she gets to the car and realizes that there is no sailboat. And I'm going to say that Janice thinks the exact same thing Mary did. Was, oh shit, let me get out of here. Ted, without skipping a beat, turns around and knocks her. I mean, just with the crowbar, knocks her. And immediately was like, no, I'm going to take no chances this time. I'm going to take her. So he knocks her with the crowbar and he drives her up. This time he doesn't take her to Taylor. He takes her in the neighborhood, which is like, I looked it up and I think it was less than 10 minutes. After he leaves her there, he drives back to Lake Sammamish. Then he sees Denise Naslund. Denise Naslund was 19 years old. She was by the restroom, and Ted uses the exact same line. This time, of course, he's mentioning that his name is Ted. 3 other girls happen to hear that his name was Ted. So then Ted takes Denise all the way back, takes her back to the hillside of Issaquah, takes her there and attacks them both. Now, mind you, he is torturing both of them, but one of them has to see the other one get murdered because he is going back and forth. I can't even imagine what these 2 poor girls are going through. So I can't really remember, to be honest. I'm going to apologize for this, but I couldn't find, but they did find a jaw and a femur. And I can't remember if it's both of theirs, one each, or it belonged to specifically just one of the girls. But I'm just going to assume that one of the jaws belonged to one of them.
It could have been 1 and 1 because both of them, they said remains were found for both of them. So
correct.
It could have been 1 and 1.
So the very next, because they found the bodies not too long, the 3 girls that I mentioned earlier that were by the restroom when Denise was picked up, they go to the police and say, hey, we actually heard a guy come up to her and ask for help. He was wearing a sling and his name was Ted. So now that they have his name, they also mentioned this is the car this is what it looks like. So now they also have what he's driving. They have his name, they have his car, they even got a sketch of him. They pulled out the sketch, and the only thing is the sketch didn't look anything like Ted Bundy at all. I mean, he had an afro. Ted has like this, like almost not square face, but the picture looked very slender and straight and narrow that it didn't look like him at all. So either way, he was able to get away with it. So the police station started getting a hotline to just get tips in. And do you know that one of Ted's professors called it in and said, I think this is one of my students called Ted Bundy. It looks exactly like him. You might want to look it up.
Yeah.
Well, do you know that that's the same time that the girl, his friend that I was referring to earlier, I don't have her name, she also realizes, well, maybe this is Ted. No, there's no way it could be Ted because Ted's a great guy. Yeah, there's no way. So they don't piece it together that they actually have, through all those tips, they have Ted.
They have his name.
They have his name. They actually have his last name too because of the professor. So in August, Ted leaves because it's getting too hot here. He already has... it's Washington State. He has now
Oregon.
Yeah. It's just getting too hot. So now he gets accepted to a school in Utah for law, and so he takes it. He takes it to Salt Lake City, Utah, and he's like, peace. mind you, this is still 1974, October 2nd, 1974 to be exact. He goes onto this rampage and he gets 16. Look, this is where he gets younger girls. He gets a 16-year-old Nancy Wilcox. She was last seen with Bundy. Her body was never found. It doesn't specify too much with her. So, do you have anything?
No, same.
Yeah, I don't have
Because they didn't find her body, so it's like we really don't have much.
And I think he never even explains because they go and interview him before they.
Because once he finds out he's like on death row, he's like sets up all types of interviews, and this is where a lot of these names come out.
But it's like now keep this in mind with Ted, it's almost like a cat and mouse game. He reels them in by making it seem like he's gonna tell you all the information and never really does. Even in the interviews, he avoids the murders.
Yeah, he's almost speaking like in third person because he doesn't want to take accountability. Again, having that power.
And when they were interviewing him, even the interviewer said it almost felt like he liked the fame of it.
Yeah.
But he wanted nothing to do with the murders.
Nope.
Even though he mentions it. So the next person that he murders is Melissa Smith, who was in Midville. This is interesting. She was the Midville police chief's daughter. She was sodomized, raped, and found 9 days later. Because he had an age range that looked almost exactly like Stephanie. If you remember, Stephanie was his first girlfriend, his first ever anything. And they all had long hair apart, like very beautiful girls, but almost exactly similar to the T. Except they were mostly college students.
Yeah, the beginning.
Correct. And now I feel like this is where he's starting to progress. Yeah. So Laura Aim, who is also 17, she disappeared on October 31st, 1974. This poor child was found on Thanksgiving Day. I know this is going to be disgusting, so you were warned. Okay, so these girls that he ended up murdering, these 16, 17, he would go and revisit them and also go back and have sexual relationships with them.
They said that she was badly beaten to the point where they couldn't recognize her face. She was strangled and sexually assaulted, and she was found her body was completely frozen at this time by hikers in a mountain. So he uses the mountains a lot.
Oh yeah, well remember, if you remember when he grew up in the mountains, so that's where he almost felt safest, right? Okay, so now we're in August 8th of 1974. Police started working on capturing the murders of these girls. They even got together, were able to do a little bit of the detective work and noticed that there was, because the buggy kept coming up into play. So what they decided to do was they were like, you know what, let's do detective work. How many buggies were purchased in the area? But it came out to a huge number of 48,000. Now that's a lot. So on top of them on the hotlines, trying to take notes, trying to get everything together, were able to break it down to at least 100 people, because remember, Ted's name was already part of this equation. So I do want to mention this, and I did see it on, I did see this on Netflix. Elizabeth, which is known as his girlfriend, is still his girlfriend at the time, which is Liz Clover. Sorry. Elizabeth, who is still his girlfriend, Liz Clover does call in. You know how they were taking calls and so forth. She calls into the police station and tells them, I want to talk about my partner. And I think there's something to this. Mind you, she does get into the interview and they're like, well, why do you think so? Mind you, there have been plenty of calls from other girls. Oh, I think my boyfriend's the one. I think my boyfriend. But really, she had a lot of details that matched up with what was going on. Now, they sat down with Liz, and Liz detailed what other people couldn't relate to. So, for example, Liz found a bowl of keys in her house. She was able to find women's underclothing, a plaster of Paris, and me and Melissa were like, what's a plaster of Paris? I was like, oh, I was thinking it's a photo, mommy.
I was just like, what does Paris have to do? It was just weird.
Me too. But we both looked it up and we found out that it's plaster that's what he used to make the fake cast. So that's another thing that she was able to bring up. And of course, remember, he would use a sling to get the attention of these girls. The way they were trying to tie this in plays a factor, but I think you have more information. And we'll come back to that in just a second.
So on April 8th, 1974, Carol is 18 at the time, and she's approached by Ted, and he is disguised as a police officer. So she's going to the mall, kind of wants to like just roam around, kind of just walk around. So she ends up, she parks her car to where it's kind of lit, under like a parking light, goes inside, ends up at a bookstore, and she starts looking around, and she's approached by the officer at the time, which is Ted, and is telling her that he saw someone breaking into her vehicle. If she could please, follow him out and see if anything's missing. Of course, she's kind of like, okay, all right, I'll go do this. Goes in, follows him. They go out there, and she kind of peeks and sees that there's nothing missing. And she's telling him, well, there's nothing missing. Like, everything looks like it's in place. And he's like, well, no, I think you should, see, are you sure? Are you sure? Kind of questioning her and asking her. And he goes,
are you sure? Look, there's more details. Just carefully look. Yeah. Just make sure. So then he can use the crowbar on her, because he's notorious for using it.
Yeah. So he eventually tells her, hey, I think you need to go to the police station and make a police report, because that's where we have them. We have them at the police station. If you want to come with me, and I'll take you. Okay. They walk to his vehicle. The vehicle ended up being the little buggy.
Well, before she does that, so sorry to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
So Carolyn, because most of the time we hear these stories, we think to ourselves, why aren't you asking for identification? Something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Sorry.
Something. But honestly, it does ring. I'm sure it's screaming at the top of her head. So she asked Ted before she did anything. She said, may I ask you, because she was getting uncomfortable. She says, do you have identification? And he pulls out a badge. So he is ready for almost any question. She says, oh, okay. Then she realizes, you know what? This is an officer. I'm not going to question it.
So she proceeds to follow him to the vehicle. The vehicle happens to be the buggy or the Beetle that he's been using this whole time. She's still kind of like, what? But she got in.
But she said that she thought to herself, oh, maybe he's undercover.
Yeah.
And that's why he's using this buggy.
So then I'm not sure where they end up, but I know because in what I have, it just says that.
It doesn't say the name of the elementary.
Yeah.
But so what he does, Ted tends to drive. He's driving with her in the car. And he then pulls over onto an elementary parking lot. And she instinctually said, oh, shit, something's happening. I know that this is not right. Well, immediately he grabs his handcuffs, pulls it, and locks one of her hands on as she's swaying, trying to, of course, fight him back. At the same time, she's trying to get out, but doesn't know how to grab the handle. Well, he's trying to lock her in, so he can't. So as he's fighting her, he then, I think he's trying to reach for like something. But the closest thing to him is a gun. He then tells her, you move, I will kill you. And she said, well, then do it. She said, I'm going to fight. At the same time, she's able to pull the handle of the car. She jumps out, runs. Ted gets out of the car, chases her with a crowbar, and is trying to bash her over the head. She is fighting tooth and nail to make sure she tries to survive. At the same time, as she's fighting, she is scratching, she's pulling, she's doing everything possible to, what is she supposed to do? She's doing. At the same time, this car pulls up on the side of the road where it's driving by. Carol jumps up, rushes towards the car that's driving by, unlocks the door, jumps in, screams to them, please drive me to the police station now, now. Mind you, this is the first girl that Ted has ever tried to, or has gotten away. And I think this is where it switches with him. How could she get away? Whatever is playing in his head.
He's not going to let it happen again.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. You had a little bit more detail than I did.
Yeah.
So she ends up getting away. She goes to the police station, the actual police station, makes a report on what happens to her. And it kind of stays there because they really don't have anything else. There's not, I mean, they probably do her nails and do all of that. But as of right now, there's really not much they can do.
So at the same time, Ted is in this rage and anger. You could tell he is really angry at her.
Yeah.
But he still needs to fulfill this need of wanting to murder one. To a high school, which is called, what was it called?
Viewmont High School.
Viewmont High School. Well, Deborah Kent is in Viewmont High School. She happens to be seeing a play. And during the play, she leaves a little early because she's got to go pick up her brother. She realizes, I got to go. But she never makes it over there. Because they call the police and so forth, they end up finding a key that did match and unlocked the handcuffs that
Carol had on.
Carol had on her. And I think this is the part that they're automatically tying it together and they're saying, okay, there's gotta be something here.
So he does successfully abduct her and kills her. And in 2015 is when they find a body part, positively identify her by her kneecap. So she becomes one of Ted Bundy's victims.
And this is the part that it seems like it's starting to get really hot, right? For Ted, because now the police is involved. Somebody got away. Somebody can identify him. He is saying, okay, this is getting too much. Let me head towards Aspen, Colorado.
So January 12th, 1975, Karen Campbell is abducted. I can't say it. In Wildwood Inn in Aspen, Colorado. She is a registered nurse and she was in town to go skiing and was attending a medical conference. She was there with her, I think it was her husband or her boyfriend?
Her husband.
Fiance,
I'm sorry.
A fiance and his 2 children. They were in the hotel lobby. She's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go upstairs. I want to grab a magazine. I'll be right back. Gets into the elevator and she's never seen again.
This is the creepy part because it never states that he was there right away. Like you don't know. So you're thinking, there's no way it's associated, but she goes missing.
She's never seen again. On February 17th, they find her badly damaged body. It's kind of eaten by animals. You know, it kind of takes its course at the surrounding mountains that were around that Wildwood Inn. Cunningham, on March 9th, I don't have the exact date, but it's March 1975. She's 26 and she's a ski instructor in Colorado. She is going to meet her roommates at a local bar. She's never seen again. She's approached by Bundy. This is where he kind of asks her for help. Doesn't say what kind of help. It just says he approaches her, asks for help. She was kidnapped. She was never found again. Neither was her body.
Oh, poor baby. And then...
You have the next one who is Denise Oliverson. She's April 1975. She's 24. And it says that she had, I may have the information wrong, I may not, but this is what I found. She had a fight with her husband. She jumped on her bike, headed to her parents' house. She never made it to her parents. Her bike was later found under I think it is that viaduct?
Viaduct. Yeah.
Viaduct. I don't know what that is. I didn't look that up.
I've heard it before, but I don't remember.
And it says later on, of course, as we go through the case with Bundy, he has a series of interviews with some of the journalists. And in this, he says that he threw her body into the Colorado River and she was never found.
Oh, this is a viaduct.
Oh, okay.
So it seems like a bridge that connects from one gap to drive over. So a viaduct. That's what that
Yeah,
is.
it's kind of like a big arch.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm gonna butcher her name. I can't say her last name.
Lynette Culver. Remember, Culver is a suburb in California.
So on May 6, 1975, Lynette, who is 12, is spotted playing at a field in
Alameda.
Junior High School. She was raped and murdered in his hotel bathtub.
Oh.
He later states that he threw her body into the Snake River. Her body was never found.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's horrible.
So then you have, I wouldn't say it's the last victim up until we get into his arrest. So Susan Curtis, June 1975, she was 15. She was kidnapped Birmingham Young University, and her body was never found. It didn't say much on her, like what, exactly happened to her. Just that's all they gave me for her. So then we go into August 16, 1975. So he's arrested by Utah Highway Patrol.
So the reason he is pulled over is because one night a cop happens to be at the right place at the right time. He notices that a beige buggy drives by, and he's like, wait, that looks really awfully familiar. And I'm assuming it's like being the lookout, right, for this. So he starts driving, turns on the sirens, and Bundy just keeps going. He follows him and then finally pulls him over and tells him, like, hey, what's going on? Why didn't you pull over? He says, you're going to be arrested because he did attempt to evade a police officer.
Yeah.
And because of that, he gets arrested and and this is where
they do the search on the vehicle, and this is where they first notice that the passenger seat is removed, and it's like, why is it removed?
So they don't see it just yet. They notice that they take him to the police station, and this is where the conversation immediately says, hey, between police officers, they're like, we have a hunch. They mention it. We have a hunch. I think we need to look in the car, and they find this. So during that time, right, the police are having the conversation. They go into it and immediately notice by just looking from the window that the passenger seat is gone. But they also notice that there is a brown tote bag. You know those travel bags, right? That has enough to, like, if you're going to go for a couple of days somewhere. Well, inside this bag consisted of a crowbar, a flashlight, rope, handcuffs, ice pick, gloves, ski masks, and pieces of bed sheets that can be used to tie somebody up, as well as trash bags.
Also, it says that they do, I'm not sure if it'll come up in, the research that we're still doing, but it's also that they did they had a warrant for his apartment and kind of find nothing there. But Bundy later states that the police, when they were doing the investigation in his apartment, they missed a hidden collection of Polaroid photographs of his victims. Then he later, when he gets out, he later destroys it.
So this is something
That is crazy.
That he does. Ted tends to do this, is that he does collect pieces or items from his victims. It is in his natural instinct to want to keep it. And a lot of people do this who are murderers and killers. They want to kind of replay that all over in their head. At least that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, because you see that whenever, if you watch specials and stuff like that, they keep some sort of momentum or something of what they've done.
And now that they do have them under handcuff, and they're like, you know what? Let's bring back Carol. So they end up bringing Carol DeRanch back into line. Remember, she's the one that got away, and I mentioned that she is going to play a factor. Well, they bring Carol in, and they tell her, hey, we have somebody that we're considering perhaps is the person that tried to abduct you that day and perhaps tried to murder you. Well, there's nobody else to put the lineup on, so they end up just bringing other officers, and they put a lineup next to Ted. So it says nothing but officers and Ted. She gets in there. Mind you, Ted is pretty sneaky, or he tries to be. He changed the part of his hair to the other side, changed his clothes and the way he looked, so then at least he did look or attempted to look different. Well, Carol goes in there and without skipping a beat, she's like, that's him, and points at Ted Bundy. Now that they do have someone who says, hey, you know what? It's him. Do not think that Ted Bundy did not skip a beat. He immediately called a lawyer that was his old friend to say, hey, they have me under fleeing from the scene because I just didn't want to stop. So the lawyer's like, yeah, of course. Ted Bundy is just so cocky. He's like, I'm not going to get sentenced. This is going to be easy. He even does his own little interviews outside the court. He's being constantly interviewed and he just doesn't skip a beat. He has this eerily calm, scary tone to him, right? He laughs, but it feels almost like, what a waste of my time. Well, they go on to, mind you, Ted says, I do not want a jury. We'll present it to a judge and then we'll go from there. Well, so during that time while she's being questioned, Ted even gets to question her and devalue her name, but it at the end does not work. The judge says guilty. And so they sentenced him to prison for
1 to 15 years.
1 to 15 years. It should not be one anything. Determine, is he going to murder or is he going to harm anyone? He doesn't have anything on his past, so they're trying to see, where does he lie? So they get somebody to interview him, and I think it's a psychologist. They're just trying to see where he stands. Well, Ted does go up to him. Mind you, he's already had an interview. He's already talked to him. They've made his decision. And he questions the gentleman and says, do you really think I'm going to harm anyone? Mind you, the way he's presented, he looks like he wouldn't hurt a fly. And the guy said, I don't know. But if you do, you will do it again. And I think this is where we have to leave it at this point, and we're going to have to do a part 2 so we can get to the rest of the murders as well as his other trial, because there is another one. And so we just want to leave it there. We just want to say thank you for listening. I know this is a lot of information, but we'll see you soon next week.
Bye.
Bye.